So if we look at chapter 2 of the Wealth of Nations, of the principle which gives occasion to the division of labor, it's quite a fascinating text in itself, chapter 2. It is many things. It is part of his working out of his economic theory, so it's economics. And it's also anthropology in the sense that it's an attempt to understand how certain practices emerged in human society. That is how a division of labor, this phenomenon that he's been talking about already at length in chapter 1, how it actually emerged in human history, the theory of that. It's also a work of philosophy, and I would call it philosophy of human nature, so it would fit somewhere in moral philosophy. That is a philosophical understanding of what human beings are. I mean, this goes way back in the history of philosophy, saying exactly what it is that characterizes a human being. This is, after all, a philosophy class. It's not, a business class. I hope that I've made clear it couldn't be a business class. It's got to be a philosophy class because I don't know enough about business. So it is a philosophical text. That is, it is an assertion about what it is that characterizes human beings. And, Aristotle said that defined a human being as a rational animal, saying that our rationality was the defining feature. And others may say that human beings are defined by their ability to make free choices. That would be to identify, make a certain claim about what the essential feature of a human being was. And then Smith would, I don't think, deny those things, but he has his own way of doing it. And of course, his philosophical anthropology, that is his philosophical take on what characterizes a human being and what a human being is, this is to say that we are essentially trading creatures. And the division of labor is an outgrowth, a natural byproduct of our, what he calls, our propensity to truck, barter, and exchange one thing for another. That is, we are inherently traders. That is, that we trade with each other. And this, he says, characterizes us and differentiates us from all other creatures who do not do this. It is common to all men, he says, and to be found in no other race of animals, which seem to know neither this nor any other species of contracts, which gives us a pretty good indication of what he believes the trading situation is. It's a contract between two individuals to exchange services or goods of some sort. But where does all this start? I mean, one could ask, okay, if we are, division of labor is an outgrowth of our trading nature, then what is it that impels us to trade in the first place? I think that the answer is quite clear and interesting and thought-provoking, and that is that we have many, many needs as human beings, perhaps, and this is no doubt to some degree a result of culture. We are more needy than other creatures. And what is the key there? We cannot meet all those needs by our own power, by our own individual exertions. We need the help of others, help our brethren. He says towards the beginning of chapter 2, in civilized society, he, a human being, stands at all times in need of the cooperation and assistance of great multitudes, while his whole life is scarce sufficient to gain the friendship of a few persons. So the question, the assertion there is that we stand in need of other human beings and their help. And the context there is the question of how we're going to get that help. What is the best strategy for getting others to give us what we need from them? He says other animals beg, and human beings beg too, and that is one strategy. But it's not the best strategy. It's not the best long-term strategy. I mean, that is, perhaps we have a few friends and relatives who love us and do things for us out of the goodness of their hearts, but those people are not sufficient, are they, in order for us to meet all of the needs that we have, even any of them, most of them, a portion of them. No, he says the best strategy for convincing others to give you what they need is to offer them as something in exchange. Um, and this is where things get extremely interesting. Uh, Human beings are self-interested, and that doesn't mean that they're totally selfish, but they are self-interested, and we can assume that about them because we can assume that they're like us. We find ourselves self-interested. So the best strategy to get somebody to help you is to show them how it's in their interest to do so. So he says some very amazing things. They're very, very famous and classical statements. He says, man has almost constant occasion for the help of his brethren, and it is in vain for him to expect it from their benevolence, their fellow feeling, their love, their benevolent feelings only. He will be more likely to prevail if he can interest their self-love in his favor and show them that it is for their own advantage to do for him what he requires of them. Whoever offers to another a bargain of any kind proposes to do this. Give me that which I want, and you shall have this which you want, is the meaning of every such offer. And it is in this manner that we obtain from one another the far greater part of those good offices which we stand in need of. It is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interest. We address ourselves not to their humanity, that notion, fellow feeling, of sympathy for the welfare of other human beings. We address ourselves not to their humanity, but to their self. Yeah, so the upshot being that we can assume, and it's just an assumption, that human beings are primarily self-interested, and that does not rule out that they have other benevolent feelings, that they have capacity for altruism, for instance. It's kind of obvious, I guess, that they do. But as far as a strategy for meeting one's own needs, relying on that altruism and the capacity for altruism is a bad bet. I find that in the world, most people, they don't have hatred towards me, treat me with aggression, something like that. But they don't. They're too interested in their own thing to really take account of me, unless I can do something for them. So what is the idea here is that I am primarily self-interested, so I produce, and I create a surplus of things, trade with, and those useful things, one hopes, useful things can then be traded with others so that I can get what I want from them. So what have I done? Primarily interested, and for the moment, one may say exclusively interested in meeting my own needs, that is, my own self-interest. I am forced to service the needs of others, to provide them with what they want. And so here is, I suppose, the germ of the idea of the invisible hand, which is, of course, as we know, introduced in a later chapter, in a specific context having to do with an argument against tariffs, an argument for free international trade. But here is the germ of the idea of the invisible hand, is that the human being does not have to aim for the good of another in order to provide the good of another. A human being simply has to be realistic about the best way to meet their own needs. We want meat from the butcher, we want beer from the brewer, and we want bread from the baker, and we don't get it from appealing to their humanity, do we? We get it by giving them something that they want. Of course, form of money, but again, money is just a stand-in for labor, goods of labor. We give them a little bit of what we've made in order to get a little bit of what they've made, and everybody's happy. This is such an influential idea, and the notion here is so influential not only in economics, it's the most important philosophical idea in modern economics, but it's quite important for us ethically because, of course, what it says is that if we consider ethics to be essentially tied to altruism, that is, for the self-sacrificing doing for another, not big self-sacrifice necessarily, but some sort of sacrifice for the good of another. But Smith paints a picture in which that's simply not necessary. that we can imagine a world in which everybody is primarily self-interested and works exclusively for their own egotistical ends, their own private needs, but ends up doing good for others and providing others with what they need. It is an incredibly important idea, and what it seems to indicate is that there's really no need for ethics in economics, and there's really no need for ethics in business. Now, whether this idea really works out in the specifics of everyday business life and business activity is really what we're going to be looking at in this course. But this incredibly influential and powerful idea that the pursuit of self-interest on the part of individuals can produce a good situation for everybody through the special nature of the trading relationship as a way for individuals to get what they need is such an important and much referenced idea that I think it'll serve us well to keep